Hey yo guys, I'm back here to give you my predictions for tonight's UFC 98 show, which emanates live from the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. Overall, I think this show, maybe going into it like a couple weeks or so ago, maybe a month ago, wouldn't have had the biggest hopes for it, but then, saw the countdown special. I thought the UFC did a tremendous job at getting Lyoto Machida over as a badass. I mean, that's their main goal, was trying to, get Machida over, since a lot of the critics are all around here think Machida's a boring fighter and what have you, not knowing, his style is to be calculating. And, in the piece it basically explained he fights like a samurai, when they used to fight with swords in Japan, and that even little nick of the blade would, lose a body part. So that's what how he kind of fights, which I think it's a very interesting mentality. I like the countdown special piece on getting Machida over. They talked about, him, training karate with his father, who invented a new form of karate based off different angles. Not your conventional karate where you go to, your rec center. Anyways, that aspect, and that, that's how they used to train like that ever since, Machida was, like 4 years old. They talked about, Machida going to Japan and, having with Inoki, that I thought was awesome when they had the Inoki part there and showing that, because, Inoki helped train Machida a little bit as well on, the different aspects, like the submission stuff. He obviously didn't need help in the karate. The submission aspect is where Antonio Inoki helped train him. So I thought that was great. And they talked about, what the slap of respect means. It comes from the Japanese Yakuza who used to slap Inoki around, actually. But anyways, I thought that was great. But I thought the best part of the whole piece was the Matt Hughes build-up. I mean, I didn't need to be hyped up more for this fight, but this thing definitely got it done there. I thought basically it was a nice, interesting piece, because when they, threw to it, it kind of got Matt Serra over more as the heel, that he's the guy who's, talking all this trash and what have you, and, oh, he only beat, GSP, and a lot of people think it's a fluke that he beat GSP that way. But then when they, came back from commercial after that, it kind of realized that Matt Hughes maybe is a dick, talking smack about GSP and escape, an arm bar, and then, that stuff like that. So, but it really, I guess overall, Matt Hughes is trying to be the face that, he's had this illustrious career and he's ready to retire, and Matt Serra's the one that's, doing all this trash talking. Matt Hughes hasn't done that much, so I thought that was pretty interesting. Overall, this card has went through a lot of changes. Of course, we all know the original main event was supposed to be for the Heavyweight Championship, Brock Lesnar versus Frank Mir, but then, a whole bunch more of injuries happened. I mean, so many to even run through here. I know we don't have James Irvin on this card. Plenty of people as well. But yeah, let's just get to the predictions here. Of course, the main card is where we'll start with. We start things off in the middleweight division with Drew McFedries versus Xavier Fopopukam. Fopopukam is another substitute late fighter replacement, but I think, he was in decent enough condition and, didn't go through a lot of damage in his last fight back at UFC 97 on the prelims there, so I think he's in a pretty interesting state there. This fight should be a great fight. Both guys came in great shape at the weigh-ins. McFedries is a specimen to mark. I mean, a pretty, average-sized guy that's, like, chiseled from stone, so that's just my thoughts on that aspect. But this fight, I think, should be really exciting. I mean, Drew McFedries is, a slightly above 500 record in the UFC, and, with that, alone, a lot of guys would be getting the pink slip and getting ready to pack it in with the UFC, but, McFedries has such an exciting fighting style that's why he keeps, getting brought back. It's like a rock'em sock'em robot style. So that's the only way I think he's going to win this fight, is if he keeps this fight standing for, a little bit longer. I mean, I don't think this fight will go long. I think if, McFedries keeps it standing, he will definitely beat Fopopukam on the stand-up aspect. But overall, in the long run, I see this fight being, McFedries obviously quick, and hopefully Fopopukam takes the fight to the ground quickly, doesn't want to stand there too long and gets a submission. I think, Fupukam's submission aspects are definitely, miles away better than a Drew McFedery's. So that's my prediction. The first fight, Professor X, Xavier Fupupukam by submission. Then we go to the next fight, and that's Sean the Martial Shark Shirk versus Frankie Edgar. Another, decent fight here. Should be a good, compelling fight. I definitely think this is going into a decision fight. Both guys don't really finish people. But I don't think that's, a big harm to the guys. I think, they put on exciting fights. So my prediction here is, the wrestling, I'm going to give Shirk the advantage, obviously. I mean, he's just got such a superior wrestling background than Edgar. Edgar, I may even give a slight edge on the stand-up, but the way I see it, I think this fight, is a cut down the middle type of fight. I see Shirk winning, but I think it's going to be most guys, being either lay and pray. If Shirk gets the chance to take down, he'll, mount you, whether it be full mount or side mount or what have you, and, ground and pound, or just, lay and, keep scoring the points. And the same could happen with Edgar. Well, I think Edgar could, even roll, make a reversal and, do the same thing, lay and pray there. But I think Shirk's just too talented to let a decision loss go that way. So I'm going with Sean Shirk getting the victory. And at the weigh-ins, the man was cheered pretty loudly, which I thought was interesting since, the last time he fought in Nevada, he got booed because of the whole steroid issue. But, I guess the fans realized that, that's in the past now, and, Sean Shirk's a really exciting fighter, so let's just keep it that way. Then we go to the next fight, which is another lacement replacement guy. It's Dan Miller versus Chael Sonnen. This is another really interesting fight, I think. I think this is a compelling fight. Not as much as a main event, but, for an undercard bout, I'm really looking forward to this one. Sonnen definitely has the rest background here. I will say that. Let's just go that way. But Sonnen's weaknesses have been stand-up and when you're on the ground with a guy who is, strong jiu-jitsu. Sonnen actually was able to hang in well back at UFC 95 with Damian Maia, but he eventually got caught in a nice, belly-to-belly takedown and then put into an amazing submission hold. One of the most incredible displays of jiu-jitsu I have seen in a very long time, and I'm not gonna, dog Sonnen for losing that fight. He lost to probably the best guy with jiu-jitsu in the UFC, so I'm not going to complain about him all. But those, like I said, are his weaknesses. A lot of his losses have been by, a TKO or a submission. With the exception maybe, his one loss to Paulo Filo was, he just screamed and the ref stopped it for his own safety back in the WEC. But anyways, the way I see this fight going is, if, Sonnen takes it down, I still think that Miller will be able to use his jiu-jitsu to, get him, get out of these predicaments. He's even got a good enough wrestling base where he can wrestle out of those positions, and he can probably put a good, a strong submission hold on, or, he can mount you ground and pound, or even if Sonnen doesn't get this to the ground, I think, there's Miller right there. 2-1 on, technique-wise. I definitely got Dan Miller winning this fight. Miller, he's coming off a very quick victory of the inexperienced Jake Rochalt. Rochalt was another strong wrestler, but he doesn't have enough, didn't have enough cage experience there. Sonnen definitely has that, the cage experience, or the time, fighting in mixed martial arts, but I'm going to go with Dan Miller here. A first-round submission. That's how I see this one going. So that's just my predictions there. Then we go to the next fight. Apparently it's the biggest grudge match in the history of the UFC. When I call bullshit on that one. We all know Ken Shamrock and Tito Ortiz was and always will be the biggest grudge match in UFC history. But anyways, this fight here, it's kind of hard to opinion on these guys' fights because Sarah's last fight was more than a year ago. It was 13 months ago to be exact at UFC 83 when he lost the welterweight championship to George St. Pierre back in Montreal at UFC 83. It was kind of a decimating performance, but Sarah had his moments in there, and Matt Hughes just got blown out of the water 11 months ago by Thiago Alves. But like I've said earlier, this Alves came in 4 pounds overweight. We don't know how much that had to have into it. You know, I'm not knocking Alves for being a talented guy or anything. I think he's one of the real talented guys in the welterweight division, and I think he'll give GSP a hell of a lot of problems at UFC 100. But still, the 4 pounds added something there. But, you know, I will say that Alves had an amazing finish there, that flying knee, and, you know, blew Hughes' knee out. But, so it's kind of hard to judge an opinion here. This fight was supposed to take place back at UFC 79 for the welterweight championship. But unfortunately, Sarah had an injury, so, you know, it's been forever and a bit since, you know, we had to remember all their hatred. And I thought that's what the piece on the UFC 98 Countdown special did to, you know, rekindle some of that stuff, and, you know, took you back to about 2007. So I was happy with that. How do I look at this fight? I think that, you know, Hughes definitely has the wrestling advantage. I think Sarah's a pretty decent enough wrestler as himself. You know, on the ground, I definitely would go with Hughes as well. Stand-up is definitely something I'm going to go with Matt Serra. But to me, the way I look at this one, I think Hughes, you know, doesn't really want to finish the fight. He kind of gave me the impression that, you know, if the fight is finished, it'll be from, you know, a one-hitter-quitter type of punch. I think he wants to have fun in there. The way I see, I think Hughes' skill range is, you know, better than Sarah. I mean, I guess the impression throughout the company and throughout the whole is, you know, Sarah got lucky against GSP. So that's my thoughts on that aspect. So my prediction is Matt Hughes via a decision. I just think that, you know, these guys are going to be very competitive, and, you know, I think Hughes will get the advantage, you know, on the ground, and the way I see it is I think he'll just want to have fun. I think he doesn't want to try and finish the fight, you know, unless he absolutely has to, and, like, Sarah makes a nice flurry, but I think he just wants to have fun out there. And after that, I definitely think, you know, a lot of the speculations that Matt Hughes will retire and, you know, go on to his other life or whatever, you know, training guys or being a farmer. That's just my thoughts there. What would happen if that happens? I think, you know, Matt Serra could go to the lightweight division, and I think he could be a threat there. Just I think his body fits that division naturally more so than 170. And then we go to the main event, which is for the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. Sugar Rashad Evans defends the belt against Lyoto the Dragon Machida. You know, this is a really interesting fight to predict here. You know, both guys are undefeated, which is the first time, you know, ever in the UFC that a title fight is between two guys who are undefeated. Now, some may say, well, Evans has, you know, that draw, but, you know, it's a draw against Ortiz. But anyways, the stand-up department, I think this is an interesting one. Striking with the stand-up, you got to go to Evans because, you know, his striking has really improved over a vast period. Just his last two fights, like, look at his striking in back in 88 against Chuck Liddell, and then at UFC 92 against Forrest Griffin. Yeah, you know, his type of style is to lay and pray a little bit. Let's see how things go out. But his striking really improved. I mean, hell, he was able to finish Forrest Griffin there. But I think that aspect. But on the stand-up, I think Machida will be using the kicks, the knees. You know, I think that aspect is gonna give me the advantage there to Machida. I don't know how much Rashad's going to shoot in for takedowns. I think Machida could be good enough just to stuff a takedown. If anything, Ortiz couldn't take him down, and Ortiz is a really strong wrestler as well. Not saying that, you know, Evans couldn't. I think there's a possibility, but I think he may want to leave that a little tentatively back. I think he may want to, you know, pick his spots on when, you know, shooting the punches in. So that's just where I think it could go there. Really, if it's on the ground, then yeah, I would definitely go with Machida if it goes down there. But really, I think this is going to be a psychological warfare, a war of attrition, if you will. So it's going to be a decision. You know, when you look at these guys' records, that's really how it is. You know, 28 decisions between the two of them, you know, in their careers. So how do I look at this one? I think Machida wins the fight. Probably maybe 4-1 or 3-2. That's how I look at it. So that's my prediction. We're gonna have a new UFC light heavyweight champion in Lyoto the Dragon Machida. I think the Dragon would then scorch the Sugar and melt. So my prediction is Lyoto Machida. So overall, I'm looking forward to the card. Should be an interesting night, and it's right now an interesting time for the UFC, as of course they're gearing up for the big UFC 100 show, and you know, now they got UFC, you know, UFC 99 looking interesting. You know, we got Crow Cop back on that card, so we'll see how he does on that card. But anyways, of course, I think the main event, there's actually a really compelling main event, Rich Franklin and Vanderlei Silva. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And plus the tough finale with Clay Guida versus Diego Sanchez. Jesus Christ, that's going to be a great fight as well. And plus how stacked UFC 100 is. So it's right now a pretty good time for the UFC. I guess quickly before I go, I definitely want to make mention of this. It's definitely a related topic. The WWE versus the NBA. You know, a lot of people are saying that, you know, oh, it's all, you know, the WWE is in the right, and they are. But we have to look at this. Look, the thing I have a gripe with, look, the WWE, they booked this arena back in August of 2008, and the rule of thought is when you get a team into the playoffs, you should notify, you know, performers or, you know, the companies like the WWE or management group of, you know, hey, your building may be in jeopardy, your time of using our arena may be in jeopardy, you know, knowing how well the team does in the playoffs. Like, there was a slight chance that if the New Orleans Hornets had gone farther, that the Extreme Rules pay-per-view, which is coming up, wouldn't have been in New Orleans. They would have moved it somewhere else. Unfortunately, you know, well, fortunately for the WWE, the Hornets got eliminated by the Denver Nuggets. So, you know, Vince is now all mad at how horrible, you know, the Nuggets management has handled this, or Mr. Kroenke has handled this, I should say. You know, he was pretty pissed off about it, and, you know, he should be. But one thing, you know, I think a lot of the media is forgetting is the WWE has pulled out of, like, at least 5 arenas this year, and they've done this on, you know, not maybe enough short notice like this. They've done it a lot. You know, just recently, when they canceled their Mexico tours because of the swine flu epidemic, they booked shows in around Alabama. But then, you know, they realized, look, the swine flu is going to be cleared up, so yeah, we're going to come back because right now they're actually really hot product in Mexico, so that's why they decided to continue to do that. You know, I'm all for that. But then they, you know, they pulled out of these arenas that, you know, they just booked, and, you know, had time to do that out of Alabama. You know, they rescheduled, but still they did that. And not even that, they pulled out of Colorado Springs, Colorado for the SmackDown and ECW tapings, which, I don't know, if I'm, you know, a reporter who's, you know, talking about this in the sports room, I would be pretty upset about something like that. So, just want to give my thought there. I definitely think Raw will be a complete burial of the Denver Nuggets and the Kroenke, you know, because Kroenke owns the Nuggets as well as the Pepsi Center in Denver, so that's just, it's going to be a pretty mean little thing going on there. I mean, that, you know, Vince and them are absolutely right. I think in a certain degree they are right. You know, they should have been notified extremely earlier by, you know, Kroenke and them, because, you know, once your team is in the playoffs, you have to potentially book yourself. You know, even, you know, when they got past, you know, past the second round, they should have, you know, notified WWE, you know, when it was, like, even on the brink, is that's when they probably should have realized. I mean, they clearly should have realized it before, but even with that, oh shit, our arena's been booked for that, they should have probably realized, you know, even when you're on the brink of beating Dallas, when they're beating the Mavericks. So, even when you're up, like, 2 games, you still should notify, or even up 1 game, you should notify them in advance. I mean, you know, this happened already. This kind of happened earlier this year of WWE, you know, in Pittsburgh, you know, during the NHL playoffs with the Penguins and Capitals. But, you know, it wasn't that big of a deal since the NHL in the United States isn't a hot commodity. It's on Versus, not a big network. Whereas the NBA, which is going to be this series between the Lakers and Nuggets, is a big game. You know, NBA is getting big ratings right now, and this is a game on ESPN, so that's maybe why there's also something you have to throw into consideration here. I mean, they eventually cleared it up where the NHL changed the dates and scheduled, you know, made a nice little scheduling concept where they actually had the hockey game earlier in advance to accommodate the WWE, so that's just my thoughts there. But anyways, that's it for me. I am out. Peace.